And this is the Incongruous channel, and I'm Dr. Andy Yates, and bringing you a sort of thought dump on the show I did on Saturday night on Beetroot Radio, which was about the question, are we being controlled? And I think the answer is yes. Question is how much and how deep does it go? Because we kind of think, we're controlled by media, we're controlled by advertising and stuff like this, but it's a choice, isn't it? We don't have to, we can always switch off. We know that an ad is an ad. It's trying to sell a product. And or a political broadcast is trying to sell a party and probably be a bit derogatory towards the other parties. And we know that, so that's kind of fair, isn't it? But the thing is, since ancient history, the powers that be, the government, the monarchy, whatever they are, have always struggled with this idea of how do we keep the masses under control? How do we ease them into certain directions? And back in the day, if you think about it, Emperor Constantine got a group of bishops together in about AD 360 and got them to put together the Bible for that exact purpose, because he knew the Christians were increasing in number and he wanted them to be controlled. So that was important to him, so that's what he did. And so that's an example. In the 1600s, we had the Civil War in this country. And that was when Parliament, which had already been around in different forms and different amounts of power, suddenly became a powerful force because it was controlling the masses. And the monarchy at the time had to deal with that, and therefore deal with that through the Parliament. And then Parliament's grown in strength to where we are now, with a parliamentary democracy, with still a constitutional monarchy, which is a kind of an odd thing, but it sort of works, doesn't it? So the real question is, how did this come about? Through history, as I said, certainly through the last two great wars, if you can call them that, World War I, World War II, departments were trying to think about, well, how could we apply some psychological control over our enemy and our enemy's people that would more assure us of victory. And so it became, departments were created. There's a place called the Tavistock Institute that was one of the things they were doing, is looking at psychological influencing of the masses, brainwashing the people, if you like. And this was a really important thing, because it's much easier to use mind control than to use physical coercion, to send people around with guns and swords and whatever. Much easier if you can just influence them in some subtle way through their mind. And you got to wonder, well, back in 1921, when the Tavistock Institute was put together, what makes you think it still hasn't been done now, almost 100 years later? And one of the big things they came up with is this idea of using fear for control. And so the idea was when the lead scientists sort of said, well, if you have something that creates shock, terror, fear, note the word terror in there, that kind of clears the mind. He called it a thing called a tabula rasa, which basically meant a blank slate. So then, as I mentioned in my show last week about conspiracy theory, you've basically opened up people so they just accept what you say. So they just allow this information to come in and don't kind of question the narrative, don't sort of go back against it and say, oh, well, wait a minute, is that true? Is that what that is? And we seem to live, do we not, in a world of constant fear, at least, and terror. We've got wars, and I kind of wonder sometimes, these wars that we're in, we're kind of still fighting the ends of a war in Afghanistan, the war in Iraq, war in Syria, the Libyan situation, it's all pretty terrible. What threat are those countries to us? I can't work it out. I can't work it out. What threat are they to us? You know, Iran, what threat are they to us? Would it not be a situation if we left them alone, they'd leave us alone? Or we could set up some friendly dialogue, diplomacy and stuff like this and deal with them nicely. Because at the moment, there's this thing over the oil tankers and it's getting a bit scary. I mean, you know, what are we going to do? But is that a created environment of fear and terror? Because then we are controlled. They've created a problem. They've allowed us to get in this situation of fear, and now they're going to come up with a solution and say, don't worry, we'll take care of it. Is that kind of what it is? I don't know. I don't know. Certainly that's what they've been working on for the longest time. I mean, they used to give people, both in the US and the UK, the experiments with LSD and stuff like that back in the 1950s. That was real. That's absolute facts. That's what our people, our government, our military, whatever they were, psychologists and so on, that's what they were doing. You know, it's history. And then, of course, we're in this new world now. Here am I talking to you on YouTube, and it's very influential. And you've got to wonder, because all of this stuff is run by rankings. So this little show here, which hopefully will eventually go up in rankings so I can get my message out, or at least provide something that's thought-provoking to get you guys to maybe comment back on it, or take some interest, or inspire your minds to think about this stuff. You certainly don't have to agree with me, but it's like, it's very important how high up the ladder you get on those rankings, because otherwise nobody will ever see your message. And is it possible to influence those rankings? Well, yeah, of course it is. And we know that Facebook itself has actually carried out psychological experiments on its users without telling them. That's a fact. They influence news feeds. And they said it was to find out if they put more kind of negative news out there, would that then generate more negative posts from users? Well, if you think about it, first of all, they're saying, well, we can see what you're posting and we can analyze it and decide whether it is positive or negative. And to me, it's like, well, duh, you already knew that, didn't you? If you live in an environment of negativity, then that promotes more negativity. And the vice versa is true. If it's more positive, it's more positive. So why did you need to do that? And I sort of think, well, perhaps they were doing a lot more than just looking at the idea of influencing the news feeds with negative or positive news. If they were actually doing a lot more than that, but that was the one where they got caught with their hand in the cookie jar. And so they said, well, yeah, we were doing this and we didn't mean any harm and we weren't accessing people's private information. Really? You believe that? We weren't doing anything else and we're going to stop. We won't do it again. Really? And would they do it if a government, for example, or a three-letter agency asked them to do it or demanded that they did it? What do you think? Do you think they would? Do you think they wouldn't? And that was Facebook. I mean, Google has been working on improving the United States Department of Defense's drone capabilities. What? Helping them make their drones more accurate. Well, you can't think of those drones by the Department of Defense as being anything peaceful or anything like this. Why is a kind of an internet service provider, Google, a search engine, why is it working on these things? Because it has the technology to do these things. It's got artificial intelligence. It's got neural learning. It's got machine learning that provides all this stuff. And of course, because we use these things all the time, we send our messages out, we talk to friends about different stuff and so on. All that stuff can be analyzed. And what if they were to shut you off once you've got all this communication set up? Or what if they were to threaten to shut you off? Which of course they do with some of the more controversial sites. Some of these sites earn money for people and they could threaten them with switching their source of income off. Because these are private companies, you know, they're not controlled by any government, or at least not controlled on the surface by any government. It's quite incredible what they can do. And then you have this idea of the Internet of Things. And when I hear about the Internet of Things, I don't know if you've heard about it. The idea is that everything is connected to the internet. So everything in your house is connected to the internet. Your TV, your stereo, your fridge, your car, your phone, your everything. The lights, the locks, everything. Which is all well and good as long as it's secure, right? But it does remind me of, they used to have the technocrats back in the day, who were this big sort of organization where they said scientists and people like that, mathematicians and so on and so forth, they were the best people to control everything. So people would be given quotas of what they could use, and everything would have a value, and that value would be mathematically calculated, and then they could work out how much food they need and how much heating you need, and you've only got this much you can use, or maybe you can buy some more. Is that the world we want to live in? Because that's the Internet of Things. And of course, being as it's out on the internet, then someone else can control it. So at the darker level of things, Internet of Things, at the darker level, someone could use that, if you've got your security system connected to it, to unlock your house. And they could come in to do whatever dirty work they wanted, and then lock all the doors and go out, blank all the cameras out, and you wouldn't even know that someone had been there, except your stuff's missing, or some other horrible stuff that they might want to do in your house. I mean, I don't know. And because of the information they have available to them, because they know when you use your fridge, and they know when you switch your telly on and switch it off, and they know what you're surfing on the web and all this, they know pretty much everything about you, from your shoe size right up to who your group of friends are, what websites you go to, and stuff like this. And how tempting would it be to a power like a government or a three-letter agency, MI6, GCHQ, 4 letters, I know, someone like that, or some darker force like, if they exist, the Illuminati or something like this, who will be tempted to say, hey, do this for us and we'll bung you a couple of million quid or something. Very hard, and us little people at the bottom here, we're just moving along and being controlled and pushed and pushed and pushed. And our human rights and our right of free speech and that sort of thing gradually being eroded as they find more and more ways to say, oh, here's a security issue, and the only way we can cover this security issue is by reducing your freedom. But hey, now you'll be more secure until the next time they're hacked, or the next time something else comes up, and then they'll take a little piece more and a little piece more. And if we have the Internet of Things, now they control everything. They control what we do, where we go, where we shop, who we talk to, everything. Pretty scary. Are we being controlled? I'm certain that we are. Again, it's a question of what level we're being controlled at. What do you think? I mean, do you think it's all okay? Or do you think that, we trust these people because they've done such a great job? I mean, look at the great job they've done of Brexit, right? And when you think about that, you think, oh my God, and these are the people who are doing that? Or maybe there's people who are above them from the, I don't know, Royal Institute for International Affairs, or some think tank, or the Tavistock Institute, or somewhere like that. They're the ones that are actually controlling these things. Would we ever know? Would these controls be known? If they control what you watch, what you see, what you hear, everything about it. They could even control the traffic lights, so they could make you late to work in the morning or make you on time. It goes on and on and on. The ramifications are huge. And, I suppose the answer, well, what can we do about it? Well, we're in a democratic process, so therefore we have a vote once every 5 years or so, although I think we're going to have a general election pretty soon once Boris gets in. And then that's one way of doing things. Plus, there's our voice. You could write to your politician. You could write to these different groups. Certainly get involved in your local community, perhaps, if that's your thing. Maybe you're too busy. You've got 3 kids and you've got to get them to football practice and this kind of thing. You've got a job yourself. Your partner's got a job too. They don't have time to do anything like this. You have enough time at the weekend to mow the lawn and wash the car, and then you're back to work again. Kind of tough, isn't it? So, but that's the question. Are we being controlled? Well, we see lots of opportunities through Twitter, through Facebook, through Google, through YouTube, that there is the potential that we could be controlled. In Facebook's case, we know they experiment on us with this information. In Google's case, we know that they will use their expertise for warfare, basically. Although I got to say, with Google, to be fair, a lot of the senior engineers and people like this wrote a letter to the bosses, the chief, whatever he is, financial officer or production officer, whatever, and said, hey, we don't like this. You've got to stop doing this. And they said, okay, we'll let the contract run out this year. But again, that's what they said. Did they actually mean that? Until they were caught with their fingers in the cookie jar, would they have admitted it in the first place? Who's to know, right? So it's just really a matter of being aware of this, knowing what's going on, making your choices, deciding whether you want to check those boxes that say, I'm okay with personalized advertising. Because when you do that, you connect yourself to all those advertisers, and all those advertisers now have access to your shopping, where you go, what you buy, or influences like this, and they will try and influence you more. And on the darker side, they've got access to your phone calls, your internet, your email, your Twitter accounts, whatever. And they can use advanced neural networks, artificial intelligence, to drill down into that to find out pretty much anything about you. So I think it's important that we just to me, that we maintain this idea of saying, no, I'm a free person in this country. I deserve some rights of privacy, some rights of freedom. You can't just take it all away like I'm just a resource, a widget in your big plan. That's all. That's all I wanted to say, really. Anyway, this is the Incongruous channel. I'm Dr. Andy Yates. Please like, share, and subscribe if you like this. Like, share, and subscribe if you don't, or unlike, or whatever. But subscribe, because that's the way you go up in the YouTube list. That's the way you get more people to listen to it, even if you don't like what I've said, or at least it's stimulated you to be shouting at me at the screen or something. That's cool too. That's exactly one of my intentions, is to stimulate you to some kind of action, some kind of thought-provoking intellectual process. So please enjoy that. All right. So as I said, Incongruous channel, I'm Dr. Andy Yates, and you guys, please take care.